Nothing. Hey, there's nothing wrong with being a 6. Oops.
I mean, it's debatable whether I'm even that. So, no.
Hey, it happens. It happens.
Oh,
We gotta wait for that.
Insta.
There we go. It's been quick, dude. Insta's been hot. Been hot like you. All right, guys, we're back on. We're live with Joe Coy from Fourth Arrow Camera Arms. Joe, how we doing, buddy?
doing well. How are you guys?
Good. I mean, I don't know how you can't do any better. Have you been busy at the shows? A lot of shows
Yeah,
coming.
we've been doing quite a few shows. Was just at RMEF this last weekend. RMEF banquet. Been doing a lot, so a lot of those and a lot of regular shows. I'm going to Ohio next weekend to the show in Columbus there. So that's a 3-day show. So yeah, we've been pretty busy on the show side. So
No, Iowa Deer Classic or anything like that.
not this year. We did the Deer Classic last year. We have so many other shows going on this year. We decided to take a break from that one this year, but we might circle back to that one again next year. Some of them we're kind of do like every other year, depending upon how it fits in. So
How's the REMF show?
those are good. And for us, we do a lot of like SCIs and RMEFs in Michigan. Um, More specifically, like for our hunting blind side, because Slayer Blinds is one of our brands, and hitting that local market up is huge for us, just because the out of state we do some of, but because of the whole delivery thing, and everybody knows us, better as of now in the local market for the blinds. It seems to be a pretty good fit to do some of those. So.
Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do? I know guys are like jumping on and they're probably like, "What is he talking
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, I work for Fourth Arrow, and of course, for those of you familiar with Fourth Arrow, we got a few different brands kind of under that umbrella. You got the camera arm side for everybody that's filming their hunts, and also the wind scent side, which is the deer hunting scents. We've got Final Rest, which is shooting rests, Tree Thrasher, which is a deer call, and then a more recent add-on is the Slayer blinds, like I was kind of talking about a second ago. So I work in marketing for Fourth Arrow. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been with Fourth Arrow since I want to 2018, I guess it is now. I don't know where time goes, but it's been a blast. I always love to hunt, and to have the opportunity to work in the industry it's been a lot of fun. So.
Is there any like negatives to it of like having to go to all the shows and being completely surrounded by the outdoors?
I mean, the shows, after months of doing a lot of them, it can be a little bit long. You're like, okay, I'm ready to be done with this. I mean, the longest one, the one where I saw you guys at last, the Great American Outdoor Show. In the past, I've done the whole entire thing, and that's 10 days, and that is long. You're like, your voice is shot. You're just ready to be done with it by the time that one's over with. But thankfully, this year we split it up, so I only had to do half of it, which is really nice. But I would honestly say the biggest downside is just being crazy busy in the fall. But I try to keep my priorities straight and make sure I'm still hitting the woods plenty. So I it's a lot of late nights some of the days of the week, so that I can leave early on some days and hunt the weekends hard.
That's you got to find that divide, right? Because you have
Right,
to have time and you're surrounded by it all the time, and everybody it's full fledged in the time that you want to be spending outside. So you got to be
right.
kind of careful,
Yeah,
or you'll be
yeah.
sucked up in it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many things like on my marketing side that, like, hey, if I don't get this video out, or if I don't get this ad out right now, it's not going to do me much good if I wait a month and a half. So everything is on fire and it's got to be done, right? Everything's urgent when you're in the midst of the season, because I mean, realistically, in the hunting space, you have 3, 4 months where you have to make it or it's not going to work. So you gotta do everything you can during that time. So it can be a challenge, but at the same time, a lot of times I'm up in the tree stand, trying to get a little work done on my phone. Well, pretty early in the sit, before the deer activity starts moving too much.
Did you have a background in marketing before, or
So actually, no, I actually started actually prior to that in for a sister company of Fourth Arrow, which is in the packaging side, and I was more in the graphics. Um, it was in the pre-press department, which is more graphic design and dealing with the whole graphic side of the printing world. Um, so the hunting side was always a passion, and that was one of those things where between video editing and websites and a lot of those other things I had experience with already, and I learned a lot, on the job and just kind of jumping right into it. And I learned from some other people that kind of helped us with our marketing on the Fourth Arrow side as well. So um, a lot of learning, on the job.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and especially in that field, right? I mean, like, how hard could it really be? Just kind of take it on.
Uh,
You're an outdoorsman, and then just
right.
apply and make it happen.
Yeah. Yep. No, I'm still learning every day. That world is, ever changing, and, even people that are fresh out of school with marketing stuff, like the way social media has impacted things, just the fast pace at which everything's changing and moving. You just have to stay on top of it, or else you're gonna get left behind. So, uh,
And once you figure it out, it changes anyway. So
Mm.
yeah,
at it.
exactly. Just that is the annoying thing. You're like, I got this figured out now. We're good. And then, sorry, nope, change.
Not happening.
We two get old like
Uh,
me. Definitely can't keep up.
hey, try your best. You can only do so much. Just try your best.
Joe, the one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is that you had one of like the craziest deer seasons. I actually was texting you when it was all going on.
Yeah.
So I
Uh,
definitely want to hear that story. So why don't you take us back and tell the story of your deer season?
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, kind of heading into the season, I had pretty good hopes for some good action. So, me and one of the other guys at Fourth Arrow hunt this main piece of property. It's like 460 acres, so it's a pretty nice chunk of property. Um, and it's a different piece to hunt. It's got a lot of ag, and not a ton of woods. So it's hard to, there's not like a ton of really good pinch points to try to like figure out where these deer are going to come out. Just when you think you got it figured out, they come out the other side, right? So it can be a challenging piece. We've had really good success though. The first year we put a food plot in. So we did the food plot again, which is right next to some bedding kind of in a bowl. And it's like three sides of the food plot. One side's like the bowl and bedding, the other side's woods, and then the other side is a fence row. And the other side of that fence row is an ag field. And then that's been a really successful spot for us in the past. But so we did the food plot, and all summer long we were getting some really nice bucks. So then come deer season. Man, I had how many encounters? There was this one buck that he was a 10 point, just a beautiful 10 point, nice and wide. Um, I had so many encounters with him. We had called him Nueve when he was in velvet, but he ended up being we thought he was a 9 point, but he ended up being a 10 point. Um, and I had several really close encounters with him during archery season. I hunted quite a bit out of the saddle this last year, which it's still my goal to kill a nice buck out of the saddle. I still haven't done that yet, even though I've hunted a fair amount out of the saddle. I always end up shooting them out of the tree stand. But um, so one morning, this was early, I think it was the first Saturday in November. Um, I had I had Nueve at 40 yards. He was coming through hot on a doe, but I didn't have a shooting lane, kind of a longer poke anyway. But he ended up standing at like 65 yards and just stood there, just like looking around. I started calling at him, but he did not. He stood there for like 3 minutes and I just walked away. And my whole season felt like it was just that right there. Like I'd get close, but just not close enough. Then my very next hunt, I think it was, or maybe it was a couple hunts later. Um, I tried a different spot, which is on a fence row in between the two ag fields, and it was a morning hunt. I climb up into the saddle, and there's activity around like everywhere around me. There's a couple bucks I was hearing before I could really see anything, and then Nueve ended up going in front of me like 60 yards, and he basically did a circle around me. So he went in front of me, went to my right. I tried calling at him just very faintly, and then he ended up swinging back around behind me, and he stayed at like 60 yards like the whole time, and it was still brilliant. I mean, it was barely filming light yet, but that's again just two encounters like that were close, but he just wouldn't really commit and come in. So to skip forward to the day, I ended up shooting the buck with a bow. That morning, it was. I mean, by this time we're getting right before gun season in Michigan, so right at the middle of November. It was 2 days before gun season. I went out for a morning hunt, and I sat for a few hours. I was going to go into work after, kind of had plenty to do, and I'm like, I'm sitting there, and not much action was happening. I'm like, I'm just going to go into work. I got so much work on my plate right now. Gun season's in 2 days. I'll get them then. So it was probably what 9:15 or something. I get out of the tree stand, and I had quite a ways to walk back to my truck. And in the middle of this property is like a big bog. And this bog is, I mean, you could picture like a moose being in there. It's like super thick, brushy stuff, and there's like pine trees kind of scattered throughout it. So I'm walking by this bog, and I bump this buck, and it's actually not in a way, but it was a tall 8-point that we called Tall Boy, and I'm like, he kind of spooked. He had a doe with her. And they didn't really know what was up. It was a perfect wind. It was pretty windy that morning too. And it was one of those things where they kind of spooked but didn't go far. I was still kind of hidden where they couldn't really see me. And I'm like, I might be able to actually go in after this guy. So, but I have to film all my hunts. You know, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't. And I didn't have any tripod with me. I didn't have any monopod with a stake or anything to be able to bring my main camera. So all I really had with me at that point was our MagSafe bow mount for my phone. So I'm like, well, I'm going to just try this. This probably won't work out. I've always dreamed about shooting a buck off the ground. Like, this would be epic, but it's probably not going to work. Well, I'm going to take a stab at it anyway. I'm probably not going to bust anything up because, you know, the wind's perfect. You know, I probably won't get close enough. I'll just back out of here later and call it good. So I ended up going in after him, dropped my backpack and my camera arm and all that gear on the trail that I'd been walking through. So I start sneaking my way gradually toward him. Him and the doe just gradually worked their way away from me, but they were pretty calm, pretty chill. So I'm slowly sneaking closer and closer, and this brush is so thick and tall that like you could literally lay down anywhere and be hidden. So you got pretty good cover, but there's also, like I said, some pine trees that were kind of help me sneak up a little bit closer. So I ended up just very painstakingly got closer and closer. Then another buck came through, and he was a really nice, like a really solid 8-point. He started coming through, and he's going to act like he was going to fight Tall Boy, the other 8-point. So they were like posturing up against each other and circling around each other. And I thought they were going to come close enough to me at that point, but they didn't. They ended up circling back around. Then that other buck left. So Tall Boy, the really tall, narrow 8 that I ended up shooting, he was still there hanging out with his doe. He wasn't leaving that doe for nothing. So I'm like, man, what do I do? They were probably 80 yards away at that point. And then he kind of got close to the doe, and then they just kind of hung out together, and they were just kind of chilling. So I ended up just very carefully creeping closer, and we're probably 45 minutes in at this point. And it was still another 45 minutes before I shot, but I got within 60 to 70 yards, I'd say, of the two of them, and I really didn't know what to do. For a while there, I didn't even see them. I didn't know where they were. I didn't want to like get up because I was so close. I didn't want to get up and spook him. And all of a sudden, to my left, comes this little like 5 point thing. And he starts cutting in like he was going to go to my downwind side. I'm like an hour into this thing, and this stupid 5 point's going to blow the whole thing up. But the crazy thing is, it ended up working out for my favor. So he started, once he saw Tall Boy, he started heading his direction. And this 5 point got within, I mean, he may have been within 40 yards as he kind of skirted to the left of me. If he would have kept going further downwind, it would have been over. But he started skirting toward the other buck, and then they were just kind of, facing off against each other for a little while. But eventually, that 5 point brought Tall Boy in pretty close. I could, at this point, that 5 point forced me to get super low. I'm like laying on my back, like just barely looking up, trying to see what's going on. And then Tall Boy ended up coming like pretty close. So I'm like, well, it's going to have to happen sooner. It's not going to happen at all. And then he started getting to a position where, and this is the crazy thing, this stuff is so thick. A lot of these times he could have been within 40 yards or 35 yards. I couldn't have shot him anyway, just because some of the stuff is so thick. But he ended up coming out to where it was a little bit thinner, and he was kind of quartering away. And I'm like, he was probably right around 30 yards. I'm like, I'm just going to stand up quick, draw back, and see if we can make this happen. So I'm laying like kind of on my back-ish. I already had my arrow ready to go, release ready to go. I stood up quick, draw back. He looks right back at me. And dude, your heart is so pumping when that happens. And he's right there. And you're like, I only have a second to shoot this guy. So I let it fly. No clue where I hit him. I knew I hit him. I had no clue where I hit him. He ran off, and then he ran, I don't know, maybe 80 yards or so, and then he just started walking slowly, and just kind of slowly creeping his way forward. And so I threw another arrow in. I ended up trying to shoot him again, but he was so far away, I missed him. But I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I hit him because he acted like he was hurt. I'm like, if I can get another arrow in him, great. I didn't know if I hit him like back, like guts or something. So I'm like, well, if I can get another arrow in him, great. But then he ended up bedding down, and I watched him for like probably another hour. And I would just every once in a while see his head get up, lay his head back down, get up, lay his head back down. And then a doe ran past him, and then he acted like he was trying to get up, but he like couldn't. So eventually, I ended up sneaking closer to him. The shot I put on him the first time wasn't great. I put another arrow in him, but dude, it's one of those things where it's like it was just nuts. Like how did that just happen right now? Like you dream of those type of encounters where you're face to face with a buck like that on the ground, and to have it work out was just crazy.
So was a lot of it just that like adrenaline rush because you're like on the ground with him as far as like as it's all going down, because it took a long time, and then by the time you get up to get a shot, like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, when you're especially when you're that invested into a stock like that, you're like, at first you're kind of in denial that it will ever happen because these deer are just kind of running around. It's like I kind of got up to a certain point where like I can't even really go any further because I'm just gonna get exposed because I didn't have as good a cover to be behind.
Right.
So like for a while they're like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen. And then when they start coming closer to you, you're like, this might happen. But yeah, that adrenaline rush when he's like, I'm trying to film this thing with off my bow, but also I was taking my bow off or my phone off my bow to like hold it up above the brush to like try to film the video of, and like a lot of the times all I could see was just tines sticking up above the brush. And dude, your heart's just going when they start like coming close enough where you're starting to believe that it actually could happen.
And not even that, you're laying on the ground and your body's probably going numb, hurting. Like I couldn't even
Oh
imagine
yeah, dude.
kind of
Trying to change positions and you're uncomfortable. Like, thankfully though, like that bog, it's got like a nice like mossy bottom. Like the bottom's pretty soft. Like you kind of squish down into it. So a lot better than being on really firm ground. But Yeah, man, it was crazy.
That's so nuts. So you were able to put a second shot in him, and then that.
Yep, yep. I snuck to him, and he couldn't really go anywhere. The uh, the first shot was not great, but it's one of those things where like you only have a second to do it. You're like, I think I got my pins lined up right. Like, there's so many things that happen so fast in that moment where when you're looking back, like, did I line everything up right? Like you're like
Mm.
second guessing yourself. Like,
We call that
uh,
brown out.
We call
yeah,
that.
Was the
yeah,
first shot just
exactly.
way back?
It was right up through his rump.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, if you
the
think
arrow
about
went
it, he didn't go that far, and
right,
he bedded down quick, and
right,
that hot doe went by him, and he couldn't even get up for that. So
right, right.
it
That was the
did set you
encouraging
up.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was a little worried. I was worried that I hit him like guts and liver or something at first, just the way he was acting. And then he bedded down. Like I thought about backing out completely, just because if I did hit him back like that, like I want to give him a lot of time. But the more I watched him after that, it was like this guy. I don't think he can get up. So I took like forever getting close and closer to him just to see what was going on, and I got pretty close. I'm like, yeah, this guy can't even move. But,
Being able to keep eyes on him is huge at that moment.
oh
Like
yeah.
if that same thing happens at a site, you don't know how he's
Yeah,
reacting
you
or
have
that
no
he bedded
clue.
down. You have no clue. But being
Right,
able to keep eyes on him lets you
right.
react and make your decisions based on what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, when you can see a deer go down in sight, that's such a cool thing because, like, especially if you don't know what your hit is and then he just runs off, you're like, I hope I got him. I hope I got him.
Yeah,
Is
Uh,
because
he down? Is he down?
yeah,
well, then you can make that mistake. Like, did I hit him good? Did I not hit him good? What's his reaction? At least that point, you're able to see him and kind of
right,
follow up and make the right decisions. If you don't see him, then potentially you're not making the right decisions, but you don't know what the right decision is to make. So
right.
that's definitely a tough thing there. And I mean,
Yeah,
going back on it, right? Like, I bet you being on the ground and taking that shot. Who knows the last second? I mean, he's not used to, and I don't know. I've never really, I don't think I've, other than with the gun, I don't think I've really shot much on the ground other than doing bow drives. But like when you're like stalking on him and you stand up or go to shoot, like that instinctual for that deer to like drop down and turn all at the same.
right,
So like you
right.
could have been there, but that split second change. I mean, it could be a
Yeah,
difference of a mile.
yeah.
My
Yeah,
first
yep. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say my first thought in that if I was in that position and I have to stand up and draw quick and the internal clock's going off because you only have so much because he turns and looks at you. So eventually he's gonna be like, oh shit, I gotta move. Like probably not getting that level, right? Like you don't have time to really check your
Right,
ball. So just having
right,
that canted a little bit, the pin could have been there. Like
right.
like we said, you brown out, man. The pin's there and then
Yeah.
yank that trigger and send it, you know?
Yeah. The other hard thing was too, is like I really didn't know perfectly right where he came in, what his range was. I had been ranging everything I could leading up to that, but right before all that happened, um, like he kind of moved closer, and it's so hard to judge some of those areas because it's so thick. And part of the reason I even had to stand up because that brush is so thick. I couldn't take like shot from the knees because that brush would be in the way. The other thing that hurt me too with the video, which I did get it all on film, which is super cool, but I, I ended up, I had 3 arrows in my quiver with some mechanical broadheads that all had lighted knocks on them. And I had 1 arrow with a fixed blade. And I'm like, at first I was going after him with a mechanical, and then I'm looking at all this brush, and I'm like, if I have to go through any of this brush, this is not going to work.
Mm.
So I ended up switching out for my 1 arrow that had a fixed blade on it, but I didn't have a lighted knock on that
Mm.
one. So when I'm reviewing the footage later, I'm like, oh, I didn't have a lighted knock on that 1 arrow. Uh,
Smart move though on the mechanical in that situation though,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
it's yeah, that stuff is thick in there, and that's not a bad thing to keep one mechanical in there. I mean, usually I have that for like coyotes and stuff, but
But it's smart because when things are going, especially if you're shooting right, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you put a non mechanical on there to be able to punch that shot? Like, or heaven forbid that if you did put a bad shot on the deer to get in close and have to shoot through brush or whatever, to have that.
Right. Right.
That's one of those things like a lot of people don't think about. Like, to have both and have your bow tuned to at least something different, if the some opportunity arises or whatever the case may be, at least you're equipped in that situation.
Right. Right. And, you know, it's not a bad idea to have a coon arrow too, you know? Yeah.
Hey, yeah, exactly.
Except that's also how you get plenty of arrows stuck in the trees and you get frustrated. But
I remember
I'm
being
sure none of us have those stories.
no, being a kid trying to shoot squirrels and all the trees around me look like porcupines. Yeah, no, I don't have
Yeah.
any of those
Yeah.
stories.
Yep.
Then you start carrying slingshot with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to take it back to the beginning of the stalk because you said something that kind of struck me personally. As you said, this could be epic. And I personally, like, that is my quote to myself. Like, anytime, like, I'm on the fence of, like, if I should or shouldn't go after something, that's exactly what I tell myself. I was like, if this works, this is gonna be epic. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but it makes you wonder, like, how easy is it for you to be like, they're gone. I'm just gonna go to work, right? Like,
Right.
just the deer. You jump the deer, they went into the brush. That's it. Head to the truck and go after it again tomorrow. But when you tell yourself, like, hey, I'm gonna give it a try. If it works, it works. If it works, it's gonna
Right.
be it. If it doesn't work, oh well. But that put you in that
Yeah.
situation because if you convince yourself that hunt's over right there, it never happens.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of those things where, like, I felt so close all season, but at a certain point, it's like, okay, I'm going to take the risk this time. And I figured I wouldn't blow anything up because it wasn't like one of our main, nice bedding areas, which later I ended up finding out, yeah, actually a lot of the bucks were running that area during the rut, and I didn't even really realize it. But it wasn't our like core area that we try to stay out of. And the wind was perfect. Like it was like 13 to 15 mile an hour winds right in my face. Like if it wasn't for that wind, I couldn't have done it either, just because of the noise of me, crawling through all that brush. And so yeah, a lot of the factors just worked out. But I guess to conclude part of the story, the Nueve that actually ended up being a 10 point that I was mentioning prior, I ended up shooting him on the second day of gun season. So just a couple days later, 3 days later, um, I shot him, and he was actually hanging out in that exact same bog.
You know,
So this is the crazy thing. I'm I'm walking out, and I decided to sit in our Slayer blind on the property, and I'm sitting there. I literally just get set up, and my trail camera goes ping on my phone. I'm like, I look at it. I'm like, oh, that's our shooter buck on the other side of that bog there. And after what happened during archery season, spotting and stalking, I'm like, well, it should be at least a little bit easier with the guns. I'm like, am I going to sit here in this blind, which is, probably, 600 yards away from maybe more of this, trail cam? Am I going to just sit here and like never get a chance at this guy? Or am I just going to try to move a little bit, maybe get in play for this guy? So I ended up sneaking back through that same bog. I didn't hardly see him at all until kind of right toward last light. All of a sudden, he popped out of the bog, started headed into the field, and I snuck up after him. Ended up sneaking out of the bog on the edge of the field, and it was like last camera light, like right at the very edge of camera light. And I made a really long shot on him. Probably shouldn't have taken the shot because it was pretty long for a 350 Legend. But I ended up getting him, but I didn't find him that night. I tracked him a bunch, brought in a dog, looked for him, didn't find him. And the neighbor ended up actually finding him a week later. So that was kind of sad to not be able to get recovery right then of the deer. That was like the one deer I'd been chasing all season. But like the whole way the season went down with two of the shooter bucks, kind of spot and stock on the ground for both of them, one with bow, one with a gun. It was crazy.
Got to make an epic shit happen.
It's
Yeah.
it's
Sometimes I guess you just got to make it
It's the,
happen.
it's the same thing, right? Like you're in the blind, and like I could sit here, but if I go over there, some epic shit might happen.
Yeah.
do you know what we call that here? We call that on the outdoor drive. We say killer's gonna kill, and that's exactly what that is. It's like
Uh huh.
like Steve had said from the beginning, like the first deer. I could just oh, that jumped the deer, whatever. I'm just gonna go to work, or it's no, dude. I'm gonna get after it and I'm gonna go kill him. You're in the blind later on. I could sit here and hope that he runs 600 yards before dayfall. No, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna kill him. That's that killer's gonna kill instinct. Like, just get out there and get after it, no matter what it takes. Like, even if it is a failure, but if it comes together, it could be the best thing that ever happens. And like,
Right.
a lot of people are afraid to take that risk, right? Because
Right.
there's risk, but there's a good reward in it too. You know.
Right. Yeah,
Epic
in
shit.
the past, I haven't really been the one to take that risk, but like there was just so many factors that led to me like, okay, I'm just gonna try this time, and like both of those, both the day I shot my archery buck and that other day, my hunting buddy was not on the property, so I knew at least I wasn't gonna mess anything up for him,
Right.
and this bog is literally at this very center of this decent sized property, so if I do bump something a little bit, it's not like they're gonna just, hopefully push everything out to the neighbors, especially during gun season. But
I was gonna say we just made the new Davy Crockett. This dude's gonna be running around there trying to kill everything.
I,
well, you can take that to an extreme because
Yeah.
you you can definitely blow things up and really kill yourself the rest of the season. So uh, you have to try to be careful, but there are certain times where it can work.
mm. I think as make those moves and find success like you did, it makes it easier the next time to convince yourself like, okay, I've done this before, it's worked before. You can draw off that experience, and you just start stacking up experience, and then next it's just like, dude, confidence, baby. Like I'm gonna kill that deer. I'm going in there to kill a deer. But I got questions about this bog because I was thinking about this as you're telling the story. What was the reason why you guys hadn't been hunting it? Is it like too thick to like saddle hunt, or like what about it was like you hadn't really hunted it?
So, like this particular area, like this bog in the center of the property has always been one where so there's like trees around it a little bit, but then it just goes right into ag field. So it's basically ag all the way around it. Um, and it's a tricky spot because there's so many other like good spots to hunt,
Mm,
and a lot of the trees are so thick on the perimeter of it. I did actually hunt the edge of it one time on the ground because I couldn't find a spot for my saddle, so I just ended up setting up on the ground. But that didn't really pan out that night. We did have one saddle spot kind of on the north side of this bog, but um, never ended up seeing the deer kind of cross through there like we thought. Um, but even if you did set up on this thing, this bog is so big. If they don't cross through at the right spot, you might be able to see them from your
mm,
spot, but it's really hard to know where they're going to be coming in and out because there's a million areas that they come in and out of this thing because there's ag everywhere around it. So yeah, in the past, again, we haven't seen a lot of activity there, um, but there was definitely some during the run. So
well, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, do you think do you think it got hot this year because it had lack of hunting pressure? Because it
oh,
was
and
like
that definitely could be part of it too. They definitely could be part of it too because we never go in there.
yeah.
We stay out, and the the funny thing too is like the deer that are in there can see around them pretty well because there's not that many trees on the perimeter. And some areas are completely clear up to the ag fields on the perimeter of the bog, so they can be bedded right in the center of it and feel
Mm,
really safe and still have a good view of what's around them.
and a
And the other thing too,
million
it
eggs.
was a lot drier. It was a super
Oh
dry year.
yeah,
So
yeah,
normally there's a lot of water in there.
yeah,
But this last year was pretty dry. So I think that probably was another factor.
yeah. Plus, they have a million exits, so they can see
Right.
anything coming from any of the ag, and if they see something coming, they have a back door to any direction.
Right. Yep.
Are you going to use that spot to your advantage now that you've learned a little bit more about it?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Especially during gun season. I think we've seen that during gun season it can be a pretty productive area, especially as I mean, we're from Michigan where there's a lot of hunting pressure.
I was gonna
And
say that. Is there a lot of hunting pressure around that property?
oh yeah, yeah, like there's a lot of gunshots
Michigan,
opening
dude.
during
You
gun
heard him say it.
season. Yeah,
Michigan.
they're
Yeah,
That's all you got to
we're
say.
pretty we're pretty high density of hunters. But I mean, thankfully, this piece like there, I've hunted a few different areas in Michigan, and there's some areas that are pretty solid where you get good deer. Other areas they literally shoot everything. But thankfully, a lot of the neighbors here are pretty good about letting them grow, and that definitely helps this particular area. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into all that with but it's hunted hard, but not everybody's shooting everything until gun season, and then people get loose or their kids go hunting and stuff. But um, so
is it worse than like PA, or is it in that same realm? Like every door there's a hunter.
it's similar to PA, and I'd probably say some areas are. I mean, some of the PA guys I talk to, some of these PA guys are shooting some really good deer. Um, So there's probably some areas of PA where it's really good and other areas where it's like terrible. Everybody shoots everything. And same way for Michigan. Like some of the areas around like some of the Amish communities, they like to shoot everything, right? So like there's different, groups, and then as soon as some neighbors know that their neighbor's not going to pass anything, oh, if he's going to shoot it, I might as well, and that just feeds off itself, right?
And it's kind of funny. Is like everybody. I know you bring up the Amish, and we haven't talked about the Amish
You
in a
make good
while.
hot pockets. That's all I'm gonna say.
Make really good hot pockets, but the
Oh yeah, yep,
hot pockets. But no, like there was a couple times. So I've been to Ohio a handful of times, and there's a ton of Amish communities around. But I've met some like super cool Amish dudes that like are
yeah,
super mint friendly. Like they're not into the typical Amish hunting traditions. Like, there was we were hunting on this one ridge, and the dude's like, "Yeah, there's a deer up there. He's probably 150, but he snapped off all of his tines on one side." And he's like, "If you see it, try to pass him because you know we haven't shot him all season, or what? You know what I'm saying?" So like,
right.
it is. But then there is the other ones, dude, and you hear the stories like 15 people jump out of a van and they're doing deer drives and nothing lives. Bad poaching
Yeah.
stuff
What?
up.
Yeah, well,
Where does that come
yeah.
from? Like, is it like no respect for the law, or like what? Where does that whole practice come from them?
I mean, some of the ones around here, I feel like they're just like they just want to get meat and they want to get it, get plenty for the freezer. Like sometimes what we'll do is we'll shoot some does and give them to the Amish too. So like, hey, we got some more meat, and then hopefully, like, hey guys, try to leave the bucks alone, especially the little ones.
That's a smart move, though. That's a proactive, smart move, right? Like, here, man, I got plenty of meat. Stay
Yeah,
out of the.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
like,
You don't need to shoot that little 4 point for meat.
yeah, that's smart. Yeah, because I get it though. I mean, it's a survival thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
I understand it if you're, but we've understood the management aspect of it, and I think it's not just Amish, right? There's a
Shoot,
ton of
I had a little Amish in me when I was a kid, boy. Let me tell you that.
what are you talking about. Like, there's days nothing goes by, but no, I get it and understand it. Like everybody across the board, like there's bad everywhere, but it just seems that it
yeah.
gets like magnified with
Right.
when
Yeah,
you
and
put it.
and everybody has different goals when it comes to hunting, and I'm gonna respect somebody that's proud of 4 point. That's awesome, dude. I,
Hmm.
I remember some of the first deer that I was going after, man. Like you don't want to take that from them, right? But it is fun once people can see how management does pay off, and it takes some patience, it takes some time. But once you see your average, bucks just on average being bigger and better, it's like, hey, this is actually a lot better here. Let's keep going with this.
I think that you have to graduate to a certain degree, right? Like you can't. And I think it's like, you know what, honestly, like to turn it back, like the days before social media and everybody filming their hunts and all that kind of stuff, like we didn't really care, right? And we were just learning how to deer hunt, like it didn't matter, right? And then I think as now
Right.
as all of us filming and social media, those people that we looked up to that were then killing big bucks, we were just like, oh, I just want to kill a buck or I just want to kill a deer. But I think it's just like so glorified now. And there's so many avenues of guys shooting 130 pluses every single year. And everyone's like, I want a deer like that. But like, you don't learn to shoot a deer like that until you shot 15 other deer, right? Like, it's just
Right.
like
Yeah.
jump into that and like shoot a monster because like okay, if you're a first year hunter and all you want and you're passing deer to shoot one monster, well, what happens when that failure happens and you hit it far back,
Right.
or you know what I'm saying, you don't even know how to deal with it, like you don't even know how
Right.
to deal with the situation at hand. You're passing deer for what reason? Like you need to
Right.
learn how to deal with the situation when it comes to hand. I don't know, that's just my own
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like, as I've gone along in hunting, it's like, every year you might have a little bit different goal, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, I
Mm.
want to really step up the game this year with doing this, or, um, and that adds more challenge too. Like the amount of 2.5-year-old bucks that I've passed up in the last 4 years that before I would have shot, like it, you have to put more time in it, be more dedicated, and it forces you higher goals in hunting, for just force you to become better and become, really try to figure out what those mature bucks are doing and try to, think like a deer, what's impacting, where they're going, when they're hitting the food sources, like all those things. Yeah, and that's just something that we're all on our own, like, arc as a hunter with what our goals are and what we're trying to go toward, and that's going to change too based upon the area you're hunting. Like
Hmm.
I'm not in certain parts of the country. Like my biggest Michigan deer was that 8 pointer shot one bow this last year, which was just under 125 inches. Which for me, for Michigan, with where I hunt, dude, that's awesome. Like that was that next step for me. Like getting deer 120 or above was kind of that next step, right? But now I can jump up to the next step and try to, go after another one. But again, like at a certain point, you still want to have a baseline standard where, you know, I mean, yes, you might want to try to wait till everything's 150, but you kind of have to be somewhat realistic in with where you're hunting too.
I mean, let's be honest. There's nothing better than chasing a blood trail or smelling the gunpowder after you shoot something. So sometimes you
Yeah,
just can't really hold it back forever. You know,
yeah,
you gotta let it
exactly. Yeah,
go.
don't go five. If you go 5 years without shooting a buck, okay, maybe you need to lower your standards.
Right. Or become a
It took
stop.
me one.
Or become a better shot, or not.
I had one good year with some really high standards, and after that, I had to let the old thing eat a little bit this year and get a little killing out of my system.
Yeah, yeah,
But like you said,
yeah.
it's an art.
Again,
Hey, it's an
right.
art. So it doesn't have to go like this. It's
Yep.
it's
It,
allowed it's allowed to do this.
yep.
It's allowed, you know what I mean, and
Yep.
it's all personal. Whatever makes you happy, right?
Yeah, and there's so
I
many
do.
factors out. There's
Good.
factors outside of our control, like EHD. Like that can devastate areas, and then you're trying to rebuild from there. And yeah, so many things like that.
Well, I think the other thing too with hunting in itself, like with that curve, right? Like it's a sport with yourself. So there's a double-edged sword when it comes to that though. Like it's you're only competing against yourself to get there, right? And find what fine tune what your goals are. Oh, I want to shoot 2 does for the freezer and I'd like to shoot deer over 120. Okay, those are your goals. That's good. The problem with it being a one man self driven goal sport is that you think you're the best ever. Okay. When you do, and nobody to slap you in your knees and knock you down back down to your
Right.
feet. So they
Yeah.
like that. That's I think that's where the egotistical thing comes when it comes to hunting is or whatever in the outdoors, because it's only a sport against yourself. Like, we've all played team sports. When there's a captain there to tell you to clean the back of the bus, you shut your mouth and you tuck your tail between your legs. You go to
Yep.
work. Like in this hunting world now, you're the best hunter ever, and there's a guy in the back that's like, I don't need I don't need to film my hunts. I've shot 15 deer that are all spike horns. I'm the man, like
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, and I think the big thing is just like always learn. Like, dude, there's so many like different strategies like you guys talk about, whether it's setting up your food plots with more screens. Like there's so many different things that as hunters we should just be like always trying to learn from our experiences in the woods and from other guys.
yeah.
And just staying teachable and like, dude, I definitely don't have it all figured out. There's so much you got, you're learning yet with hunting and
When somebody figures it out, they better let us all know because
yeah.
that's a formula I don't think anybody will ever figure out.
Yeah.
Always think that you got it figured out like you think you got it figured out and you have a really good year with high expectations and you succeed. And then the next year you're like, "Oh, I'm going to do those same things." Well, you're going to get spanked.
Yeah. Yep.
The best is when you got it all figured out because you got a bunch of bucks on trail camera in August. I got it all figured out
Yeah.
now, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. Come October 1st, they're like,
Yeah,
where did these things go?
Yeah.
I suck.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got this one mounted this direction. I got this one mounted that
Yeah.
direction. Look at him. He's still in velvet. We got this thing dead. Yeah, October
No,
1.
no. Come January show season. How was your season? Oh, I had this one on camera. I had this one on
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah. That's been me a lot of past couple of years.
Oh yeah, same.
We all been there. Joe, we all been
Yeah.
there.
J-
We're eating backstrap in November 1 thinking, we're thinking that we're eating backstrap, but in all reality we're just freezing our
Yeah,
ass.
it's
Freezing.
freezer burnt back there from last year.
From
Joe,
skipper dough.
did you were you able to film the second buck?
I did.
Did,
So
did you bring the
it
tripod from like how'd you pull that one
so
off?
so this was a thing too where I actually brought my monopod with me along with my camera arm just in case I wanted to leave the blind because I kind of prepped for it already. Um,
I wonder
because
what brought that thought on.
well, here's the deal. So in Michigan, where I'm at, the piece I hunt is literally on the border, on the south side of the border with where you could be hunting with a rifle. So if I was on the other side of the road, I could use my 30-06 or my 6.5
Oh,
PRC, and I could be shooting, well, a lot further, more comfortably. But because of the side of the road I'm on, I have to use either shotgun or a straight walled cartridge rifle. So hence I was using the 350. So this, like I said before, like this property has a lot of ag, and you can see a long ways, and you can't shoot a long ways. But there's enough topography, and there's enough areas that kind of break up some of those bigger chunks of ag that allow you to where you can move around, right? So I did kind of prep in case I did see something further away, and I had to sneak out and try to get up closer on them. So
try to make something epic happen.
yeah, exactly.
So you had the camera on the monopod with the
Yep,
stick,
yep. I
and
had the camera on the monopod mistake.
then when you left
So
the
that where
blind,
Yeah, so when I left the blind, I literally just dropped my backpack, which I used the stiff arm inside of the blind when I
yep.
got set up, and then I just left that there and then took off with the monopod stake. And that's what I too really like about that monopod stake is, if you are trying to take something as a backup, it's not like a tripod that has a lot of weight to it. It's super light. You can just throw it on the back of your pack, and you're good to go.
So when you saw him out in that field, you just stuck it in the ground.
Stuck it in the ground.
That's awesome.
I think
We're really pumped to play with that thing this year because
Oh yeah,
a lot of potential there.
it's
sure.
funny is even the weight difference, like what you're saying, the difference between the tripod and then the monopod. Like for the first 2 days of being in Harrisburg, I'm like, oh yeah, it's great. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna buy a carbon. This thing sucks not that it's like crazy heavy, but you know what I'm saying. When
Yeah,
you everything else on your backpack, and you're like, I think I might need the carbon for turkey season. And then you introduced us to the monopod. Like that's a all in one. Like that's an incredible tool to put in the self filmer's hands. Like it does everything. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to worry
right.
about thing. You don't, especially like for like Steve's example, he's going up to film his dad moose hunting. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a perfect application. If you're self-filming for somebody else, like that's huge. You don't have to worry about a tripod. You don't have to worry about
Right.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like the monopod's so simple. Sometimes it can be a little underappreciated, but like it's great because it's super light. If you are self-filming, the stake is fantastic. Just stake it in the ground. But if you are like I've used it filming an elk hunt out west, and that was perfect because
Hmm.
if you're trying to just do handheld and you're zooming way into this elk that's 500 yards away, good luck, right? But just having that little extra stability is great, and then it's super quick and easy to pop it in, pop it back out, and move it around. So
It's sweet too because it's short enough where you can sit down like turkey. You can sit down, stick it right next to you, and it's low enough. But you can telescope it standing up. Like for my dad's moose, I'll be standing up, right?
right,
Now, if I try to do that with a tripod, I'm fully extended tripod. My three legs are the footprint that tripod's going to take up fully extended is quite a bit, and like God forbid my dad has to take a step back and trips over my tripod. Who knows, right? But at least not like I have
yeah,
so much more control over that one
yeah,
one stick. But
yeah,
it was funny because I actually was saying on the podcast that we recorded after the Harrisburg show last year at Harrisburg when I bought my tripod. You were trying to convince me to get the monopod, and I was like, "Nah, I don't know. Everybody runs tripods. Like, I'm on the fence." And it's like 365 days later, I'm like, "Let me check out that monopod."
yeah, yeah. Well, the tripod definitely has its place,
Yeah,
but the monopod sure is handy thing to have in the bag.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, going back to what you're saying too, with the when you are filming somebody else on a spot and talk stock type situation, I've been in situations out west where, like, if I had a tripod, like you, a lot of times there's one little lane that you can shoot, and that same little lane that you're going to film out of too. And sometimes to get the right angle, you literally have to be over the shoulder and like right next to the hunter. And if you have a tripod and you're messing with all these legs and stuff, as quick as things can happen, especially when you're elk hunting, like you got to be able to be set up quick and be able to move quickly. Because if the hunter has to adjust and back up or move over,
right.
you got to
You
be
might
able to
have
adjust
to move
quickly,
over.
or else
You
it's
might have
not
to
going
move
to.
over just a foot, just to
Right. Yeah.
because now the hunter's in your way. I do have
Right.
a question. If you are, say, you're on the elk hunt and you're not self filming, like you're a dedicated cameraman, what do you have on the bottom of the monopod? Are you leaving? You have the stake, or you use the rubber foot?
So in when I use just a monopod, I just use the rubber foot.
Yeah.
When I was filming other people, um, there's the hard part about out west. Some areas the ground is so stiff or it's so rocky where you're not able to stake it in anyway.
Mm,
And because you're not self-filming, it's not as important to stake it in. But at the same time, there were definitely times while I was running it that I kind of wish I had it with me just because, like, hey, if I'm camping out here and chilling in the middle of the day and I wanted to do a time lapse, right, or something during the middle of
right.
the day, um, that makes a really fun transition in the video and stuff. But you really need to be able to just be hands free and just set it up for that. And
Yeah.
and that's what you're lacking when you don't have the stake. But
That's what I was thinking. I think like Dad's moose hunt, for instance, I'm probably going to run the rubber foot, but I'll
right.
probably throw that stake in the backpack just to have
Yeah.
it for,
Right.
gutting or packing out, or like you said,
Right.
just some cool, just us dragging the deer or the
Right.
moose by or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I guess that's the cool thing too. Like in that scenario, if you do need the stake, usually it's for something that you have plenty of time to get stuff set up and you're just being hands free. So you can pull it out of the backpack,
Right.
screw it into the
Right.
bottom of the
Right.
monopod and get it set up and stuff.
Yeah. Cool. That's what I was thinking. I'm glad you confirmed.
Is there any other things that maybe we should talk about for turkey hunting season for those that are trying to get into self filming of turkey season?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So some of the other things, in which we kind of talked about the steak and the monopod a lot, but for those guys that are filming, out of a pop-up blind, I think that's a scenario where you can definitely use the monopod steak with. I know got a lot of guys that do. I have in the past used that setup, but for guys that want want to be able to move your camera around a little bit more easily without having to pull it out and restake it. Our Rex arm is a really popular one for guys that are hunting out of a pop-up blind. You can pop it on our tripod, or you can throw it on the monopod with our pop-up blind adapter and our pillar clamp. So if you have a hub style pop-up, you can actually basically clamp your monopod to the sidewall of your pop-up blind. And the blind basically helps stabilize the whole system. Then the Rex arm, essentially, it's a one-piece 10-inch arm. So with the fun thing with that Rex arm is you can have like 20 inches of motion from one side to the other. So, for example, if you're running it on your tripod, the annoying thing about your blind is you're going to have blind spots where you can't see, right? So if that turkey starts coming in from the right and he's not into your main window yet, and you just can't quite see him and get him in frame, with that Rex arm, you can just easily move your camera over without having to move your tripod and be able to get that on film. So that's where the Rex arm's super handy. I know some guys that use it for spot and stalk on the ground as well. But again, for me, I'm a big running gun turkey hunter. I like the stake so much that it would be, harder to convince me to take that out with me unless I was hunting out of the pop-up, which I still haven't killed a turkey with the bow yet. So I might try to do that out of the pop-up line because it makes it a little bit easier for drawn back, but we'll see. So that's definitely one. The Rex arm is a big thing that's really helpful for filming turkeys.
Anything
The
else?
other,
The POV mount back in stock?
so our flex clamp, Silent Flex POV clamp one is not back in stock yet. We're actually making a few improvements on it.
Oh, that's
I
good.
don't know exactly when it will be back. I don't know if it will be back in stock for the beginning of turkey season. That's one's still kind of up in the air. But for those, yeah, right. For those guys that are wanting to put one of the other things that's really fun to do, if you do have your decoys, set up out there, our POV stake or our mini tripod is super fun to throw the 360 cam or the GoPro out there, and you can get some really cool second angle shots of turkeys coming in.
Wait, what is this? The mini tripod?
Yeah. So the mini tripod is just we actually sell it a lot with our Winsent units as well. It's a really just simple, small aluminum tripod.
Okay.
So for guys that, if you don't need a lot of height adjustment elevation, I mean, if you keep the legs kind of pointed down, you might get 3 inches of elevation out of it, or maybe 4. So it's not like you're going to get super high. So if you're in really like thick grass and stuff, the POV stake is a little bit better. But yeah,
That's
I tell you what though.
POV stake is the little guy I got from you, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That thing's money.
Yep. And then for anybody that does has played with a 360 cam, those things are actually pretty fun, especially in that scenario because you can get the view all the way around. So
that's my next thing is the 360 cam. I am so ready for one. Especially as a secondary, like if something is to go wrong, right? You always have everything on film at that point, which is super important, especially for someone like you that has to film, right? Like you just like, oh no, I gotta get it. So.
Yeah, if you're self-filming, eventually something's gonna go wrong. So
that's just self-filming.
Who makes a good 360? Sony? Is it a Sony?
So the one I use is the brand is Insta360.
Okay.
I mean GoPro does have a 360 camera, but Insta360's really taken over the 360 market. I have the Insta360 X3, which is the older model of it because I bought it off my coworker Mark because he was going to upgrade to the X4. So I bought his and he got the newer model. They also have, I don't remember the name of it, but they have a little bit nicer model than the X4. It's similar size, similar form factor, except it has a little bit bigger sensor. So it does a little bit bigger in low light, or better in low light, but I haven't invested in that fancy one yet. But.
They're nuts. Like they're crazy. I just, it's especially in our, like, if you put it in the tree next to you while you're like, you could get the whole hunt and everything like all at once, like as a second angle and potentially a primary angle. Like, it's for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
When GoPro first came out with it, a buddy of ours had used it goose hunting, and he put it in the decoys and then shot it up towards him, and then like they got the whole entire thing, the birds coming in, and then they turn it, and then it's them coming up to shoot. It's just cool. You can do a lot of really fun
yeah.
things.
The downside is the files are massive, but it's still cool.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Do they have? What about battery? They have like an external battery like GoPro has now that you can swap out a battery, or is it all internal like the old GoPros?
Yeah, so you can swap out batteries. I'm not aware of like an extra battery mod that you could like add additional battery storage. Of course, you could plug it in and run it. So if you're running it at a stationary spot like in your tree stand, like Justin Czar of bowhunting.com, he literally records his entire hunt with it, just in case something happens that he wants to get later. So he has like a 512 gig SD card, and then if nothing happens during that hunt, he'll just wipe it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll run that off of like a portable power pack that you charge your cell phone with, and he'll just run a USB cord up to it and plug it in. So that's one way you can do it. But like mine, I just have a couple of spare batteries, so I'll have a couple. I've got like a 2 or 3 battery bay charger or whatever, so I just come and charge up a couple, and then I'm good to go for a while.
Sweet.
That is absolutely awesome. Joe, this has been an absolute pleasure of having you on. I guess I'll ask you one more time. I know we asked you last time you were on, but we'll ask you this time is what drives you outdoors, Joe?
The man, the passion and the whole challenge, energy rush of it. I mean, that kind of defined this last season is like it's hunting is one of those things that you feel like you're so close a lot of times, but it doesn't always go your way. And just like that whole challenge behind it, and dude, the reward when it does actually work out, it's some of those days you're questioning what on earth you're doing. But when it does work out, dude, it's so worth it. So just the whole excitement and challenge behind it every season. I mean, every season it rolls around and you're ready to go again.
So now that you've completed a couple of your goals this past season, what are the new goals for the upcoming season for you?
I've been kind of thinking about that a little bit. One of my goals this year is I really do want to finally shoot a deer out of the saddle.
It's a good one.
I've hunted quite a bit out of it, but I just have not killed a deer yet. So between that and, I mean, my goal is always to shoot a bigger deer than I've ever shot before. I mean, that's always one of my goals. But
Nothing wrong with that. That's a good goal. That's a good goal, Joe. Well, man, we really appreciate it. Thank you for having us on. Thanks for coming out, dude.
yeah, you're my biggest fan. I'm your biggest fan. No, thanks for having me on. Thanks for
Hey,
having me on, Trev.
can you tell everybody where they can find you and check out all your
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, if you want to check out any of our products, you can go to fourtharrow.com. That's got links to all of our other products and websites on it. If you do ever want to watch the hunt I described, um, we actually have a show called Tay Game Adventures, which airs on the Pursuit channel, and that should air probably late summer. Our show starts third and fourth quarter. It's on third and fourth quarter, so I imagine that episode will be probably mid-September-ish, I would guess.
And there's no like, it's not YouTube or nothing. It's a
Oh, we
Pursuit.
do actually. So it's on Pursuit, but we actually do a week or two after it's launched on Pursuit. We dump it up on our YouTube channel. So
Cool.
Nice.
all of our past episodes from our season, like last year, you can catch on YouTube. So yeah, you'll be able to check it out on YouTube probably around beginning of October.
Cool. I'll post a link to the YouTube down below, so they can go check it out. So
Cool.
appreciate it, Joe. Thanks a lot, man. And for everybody
Yeah.
else taking the ride with us right here on the Outdoor Drive.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. What a mess I am, dude.